You can be the one everyone leans on and still feel strangely hollow when the room gets quiet. That emptiness did not appear by accident. Sometimes it comes after success. Sometimes after helping everyone again and realizing nobody asked how you were doing. People call you grounded, mature, dependable, the strong one. Part of you still feels weirdly invisible. Because strength can become a costume so early, you forget there was ever a child inside it. When people say you grew up fast, it sounds flattering. Often it means you became emotionally useful before you ever felt emotionally safe. You learned to read the room before you learned to read yourself. You learned to manage tension before you learned what comfort felt like. Maybe you were the easy child, the one who did not ask for much because asking seemed to make life harder. Maybe the adults around you were overwhelmed, fragile, absent, or emotionally unreachable, so you adapted in the smartest way a child can. You stopped being needy before you were allowed to be needy. You became low maintenance because being human felt expensive. Later, the cost shows up quietly. In blank evenings, strange guilt, and a life that works but does not nourish. This is why some people can handle crisis beautifully and still panic when offered care. Competence and receiving are not the same skill. Being strong too early often creates adults who can endure almost anything except softness. Softness asks questions. Survival never had time for. What do you feel right now? What do you need? What happens if you stop holding everything together? That is where the emptiness starts to make sense. It is not laziness or ingratitude. It is what happens when your personality forms around pressure. Your value starts feeling tied to staying calm, useful, and easy to carry. Children do not call it emotional neglect. They call it normal because they have no other map. So they become careful. They talk less, need less, reveal less, and slowly confuse self-erasure with love. You learn to skip the messy middle. Go straight from hurt to silence, from fear to responsibility, from discomfort to function. You answer messages when exhausted. You show up prepared, then wonder why rest feels undeserved. When you stop producing, helping, fixing, or staying pleasant, there is finally room to feel what you spent years outrunning. That can feel unbearable. And for many people, the feeling is not dramatic. It is blank, heavy, distant, like living behind glass. Emptiness is not always the absence of depth. Sometimes it is the after effect of being cut off from your inner signals. You may be great at naming other people's emotions, yet when someone asks how you feel, your mind goes quiet. Not because nothing is there, because you were trained to scan outward before looking inward. The child who had to be strong becomes the adult who notices themselves too late that they were overwhelmed, hurt, or already past their limit. That delay can make you feel broken. Usually it means your attention was shaped around survival, not self-connection. If the room was emotionally unsafe, your nervous system learned prediction first. Who is upset? What mood are they in? What might go wrong next? That habit does not disappear when childhood ends. It just becomes personality in adult clothes. Suddenly, you are the friend who checks in first, the coworker who notices every shift in tone, and the partner who senses distance before a word is spoken. You offer help before anyone asks. You apologize for tiny things and rehearse texts that should have taken 30 seconds to send. You say it is fine because conflict feels bigger in your body than it looks from the outside. Your chest remembers what your mind tries to downplay. This is the hidden cost of being strong too early. You become impressive in ways that leave very little room for being held. And eventually life asks for the part of you that never fully formed. The uncertain part, the needing part, the unguarded part. In chaos, you know who to be. Useful, calm, alert, one step ahead. In peace, your old identity loses its job. Then a painful question rises. If I'm not managing everything, who am I? This is why some people feel anxious on vacation or numb after reaching the goal they chased for years. That reaction makes sense when your system learned that calm is temporary. You stop trusting good moments because you were shaped by interruption. So even joy can feel unstable. Even love can feel like something you have to earn before it disappears. You may notice it in relationships first. Someone kind enters your life, and instead of relaxing, you become more guarded. When someone asks what you need, you freeze. The question lands on a part of you that was never truly welcomed. When someone says you do not always have to be strong with me, it can sound beautiful and terrifying. Both reactions are honest. beautiful because you ache for closeness, terrifying because you do not know who you would be without the role. So you keep giving what you know how to give. Reliability, humor, insight, practical support, presence without exposure. Then one day you feel lonely in the middle of being appreciated. That kind of loneliness is hard to explain. Everyone sees how much you do. Few people see how little permission you feel to fall apart. Sometimes the emptiness is not sadness. It is the absence of being met. You spent years becoming what the environment required. But adaptation is not the same as intimacy. When a child chooses responsibility over expression, it usually is not because they are unusually mature. Expression simply did not feel safe enough to risk. Maybe your feelings were brushed past, minimized, mocked lightly, or interrupted by someone else's bigger crisis. Maybe there was simply no room. And when there is no room, a child learns to shrink without calling it shrinking. They call it being good. Years later, that goodness becomes a trap. You know how to be acceptable in almost any room, but not how to feel alive in your own skin. You can be deeply competent and deeply disconnected at the same time. That is what makes this pattern so easy to miss. Inside, life can feel like constant maintenance. Things get done, but something essential never arrives. That missing feeling is often the self that had to wait, the needs that went underground, and the feelings that had to be postponed. Nothing disappears just because it was inconvenient to have. It waits in the body, in the pacing, in the numb evenings. It waits in the guilt after setting a boundary. It waits in the shame that follows asking for help. It waits in the way you say sorry when someone is kind to you, as if receiving care creates a debt. They worry about being too much even while carrying far too much. Burden once felt dangerous. But containers are not the same as people. People need room to spill sometimes. And when you never learned that spilling was survivable, emptiness can become your cleanest form of control. Nothing leaking, nothing asked for, nothing exposed. This is why strong people sometimes go numb instead of asking for comfort. Numbness can feel safer than need. It remembers the unanswered call, the distracted parent, the heavy house, the moment you realized your feelings were inconveniencing someone already overwhelmed. It remembers deciding, very young, that being easy was the most loving thing you could be. That decision can shape a whole adulthood. It can make you work hard enough for 3 people, then feel lazy for resting 1 hour. It can make sadness arrive as guilt. And because this pattern looks admirable, people may reinforce it without meaning to. They praise your calm while missing the cost of your restraint. This is where honesty matters. Being strong too early did give you something. It may have made you perceptive, disciplined, generous, and able to survive difficult rooms. But survival gifts can become adult cages. The problem is not that you became strong. The problem is that strength became your safest identity. When one identity keeps you safe, you cling to it long after the danger changes, even when it starts starving you. So the emptiness is not proof that you failed at adulthood. Sometimes it is proof that the old strategy finally stopped feeling like enough. In a strange way, emptiness can be honest. It interrupts the fantasies that constant capability is the same as being whole. It says something in you wants more than efficiency, more than functioning, more than being admirable from a distance. It wants love that does not have to be prepaid through usefulness. Maybe that is the real grief. Those are not the same thing. They never were. A child can look calm while disappearing inside themselves. An adult can look successful while feeling emotionally unfed. That is why self-understanding matters more than self-judgment. Shame only forces the role to tighten. If you call yourself weak for feeling empty, you miss the deeper truth. Empty is often what strong children feel when they finally stop running. They meet the silence they postponed, the tiredness they outran, and the ache of never having been softly known. That ache does not mean you are behind. It means some part of you is finally safe enough to be felt. And that part may not arrive elegantly. It may show up as irritability, numbness, tears, or the urge to disappear. Because when usefulness quiets down, buried feelings get their chance. The old self starts knocking from the inside. The goal is not to become helpless. The goal is to let strength become a choice instead of a permanent posture. To let competence live beside softness, not on top of it. To tell the truth when I am fine would be easier. Because once you see the fear inside the pattern becomes less magical. It becomes human. Then you can stop worshiping endurance. You can start asking what it has been costing you. Maybe it cost you spontaneity. Maybe it cost you play, anger, appetite, or the ability to receive without tension. The strongest people are not always the ones caring the most. Sometimes they are the ones learning, slowly, to put something down. That is a different kind of courage, quieter, less visible, and often more frightening. Because being needed gave you structure. Being real gives you uncertainty. But uncertainty is where an actual self begins, not the polished self, but the one with limits, hunger, and grief. If this emptiness lives in you, it does not mean you are cold. It may mean you learn to freeze before you learn to receive. If rest makes you guilty, it does not mean you are lazy. It may mean your body still links worth with effort. If kindness makes you suspicious, it does not mean you are ungrateful. It may mean gentleness arrived too inconsistently for trust to grow naturally. And if you feel hollow, after years of being the reliable one, that emptiness may be less of an ending than it seems. It may be a beginning. It may be the space left behind when an old survival role finally loosens. It may be the first honest room your inner life has had in years. But it is still room. And room is where a life begins to return. In the moment you admit you are tired before you snap. In the pause before saying yes. In the first boundary that leaves you shaking. In the first rest that feels undeserved but necessary. These moments look small from the outside. Inside, they rewrite an old law. The law that said your needs become acceptable only after everyone else's are handled. No child should have had to build a self around that. And no adult has to keep calling it maturity forever. Some forms of strength are just loneliness with excellent manners. It is the gap between the person the world learned to rely on and the person inside who never got fully received. When that gap gets named, something important happens. The emptiness stops feeling random. It starts sounding like a message. Not from weakness, but from the part of you that refuses to disappear anymore. So if you were strong too early, be careful what you call your emptiness. It may actually be unlived feeling. And maybe the deepest truth is this. You were never meant to be impressive before you were safe. You were never meant to become everyone's shelter while abandoning your own weather. That was adaptation, not destiny. The fact that you survived it says something about your strength. The fact that you feel empty now says something about your humanity. And maybe that is the line worth keeping. You were strong because you had to be, not because you needed less love.